Welcome to the decks of Salt of the Sea, and this is Tommy Cods with an episode of Tommy Talks Sailaway. So trim up your sails, check those tailtails on the lower end, but don't forget to check the ones up high, or what I call, it's time to tickle the belly. This is first in a series of videos that I call Volvo Ocean Race Flashbacks. What I'm going to do is go back and review races 1 through 6 and kind of give you a summary of my approach to those races. Now, I didn't record any video during those races. I have a few stills. So Nomad has allowed me to borrow some of his clips, and I will probably dub over some of the sound and leave some of his sound in there. Plus I'll insert some of my own clips and stills to kind of give you my approach to these races. So let's go and get started. Okay, this is it. The Volvo Ocean Race Leg 1 Lookback, presented to you by Tommy Cods. I'm actually using some footage provided by Nomad. But if you remember, back in October 22nd of 2017, the Sailaway community had nearly, I think, right around 70 people signed up for this race. I'm not sure exactly how many came to the line on that day, but there was a large number of boats out there, and it was quite crowded. There was a lot of boats crossing over the top of one another, and at some point it became frustrating for some of the sailors, but others just kind of carried on. It was kind of expected with that many boats that it was going to be some really tight quarters there. And as the import part of or the kind of the offshore part of this race started, boats were bunched up, but as they went along, there was a little more room to sail. It was kind of quite interesting to see, especially around the buoys, the number of boats trying to make their turn around the buoys. But the import part of this was a lot of fun. The thing I kind of learned about it is not to get too discouraged when you're back in the pack in the import part of this. I think at one point I looked at the leaderboard and I was like in 35, 36th place. And I said, oh, gee, what did I get myself into here? But after the boats kind of finished the last mark of the import series, things started settling down. We kind of had the wind that was at our back. And so it was just kind of like a long run down to the Straits of Gibraltar. Anyway, this kind of the first third of the race was not without issue. There was actually several people that were having problems getting their particular boat to register them passing a mark. And it became a real big problem. I tell you what, the organizers of the race really, it's a thankless job to do something like that. And I sure really do appreciate the work that the race committee did. In particular, El Patron just has been doing a fantastic job with this race. it's like I said, it's kind of like a no-win situation for that committee, because especially with the issues that were going on with Sailaway, and there's never going to be a situation where you can please everybody. So the race committee has done just an exceptional job on all these races, and I know we kind of have abandoned the concept of the race committee after there was just way too many issues in the first three races, but I guess what my thought here on this is, even with all those issues that went on, there's just been so many of us have had a lot of great times sailing in these races. So anyway, as leg one continues and we're heading down to the straits, like I say, it was a pretty uneventful shot down there, other than there was, I believe there was a mark kind of halfway down on the pretty close to the coast, and some people are having problems getting registered by that. I never really had any issues with the registration in the early parts of these races, because I basically came as close to the mark as, probably within 3 boat lengths. Now, when I did get down to the Straits of Gibraltar, that mark there, the earlier boats had reported they were having some issues. I was back a little bit. I don't know exactly what place I was in, but I wasn't quite in the lead group. I was, kind of towards the maybe the end of the first third, and I heard about their problems getting registered. So when I hit that mark, what I did is I came around it on the starboard side of it and made about a 270 turn. I just kind of did an S turn, and just enough to get myself registered, and then bear it away back down the course and out into the Atlantic Ocean. And I guess this is where I really learned something very important about these long races. Is once we got past the Straits of Gibraltar, I noticed several boats were heading kind of up, taking a northern track, and of course the fleet, started spreading out. It kind of bunched up going through the straits, but then the fleet started spreading out, and there was a good chunk of boats that were going up north, and then there was a group that was kind of in the middle, and then some of them kind of headed down south, and I couldn't quite figure that one out, because it seemed like at the time that was a good track to take, but it just, looking at windy, it just didn't seem like it was the better course to take. So I kind of stayed on the middle ground, but I couldn't figure out these boats that were going way, way up north. And then what I learned closer we got down toward the Porto Santo Island, I kind of learned that you kind of have to look at not what the conditions are ahead of you at the moment, but you have to look out, several hours and even days ahead of time. And that's what I figured out, as those boats that headed up north, what they were doing was they were just catching a better angle to get down to the island. And then, of course, as the fleet did make their way down to the island, there was more issues with, sink issues with the crewed boats, and I believe some people were having problems going around the marks and getting registered. But it was kind of late at the night for me, and I had to get up kind of early and break up my sleep to actually do some sailing to get around that island. And that was another point where I said, oh gee, what did I get myself into doing this VOR, this Volvo Ocean race? But I don't know, it's kind of rewarding when you end up finishing a leg. And as for leg one, all the boats, once they got around that island, they started heading up north, and there was the weather, just it did start playing a head game with a lot of us. I wasn't quite sure if I should continue on northern track or come back towards the east. I ended up kind of going back and forth, which ended up costing me a lot of time. But all in all, I kind of realized that once I got about 2/3 of the way up there, that I just needed to pick a course and a plan and go with it. And so I did end up getting up, and fairly good time up to Lisbon. I believe in this race I came in 11th. There was a lot of close navigation points coming in to the finish of the race that you kind of had to watch out for. I don't really believe anybody ran aground, but there was places at the end of this race that you could have run aground. So that's another thing, is the beginnings of the races and the ends of the races, when you really have to do some really serious sailing and make sure that you don't get into those situations. But all in all, I really enjoyed leg one. I learned quite a bit, especially about being able to plan ahead in these races. So that's it for the kind of the flashback of leg one. I'll be making another video for leg two shortly.